Where was Noah when the lights went out? In the ark. In the ark. That was, maybe it didn't land. I didn't think it would. Noah is one of those stories in the Bible that, you know, a lot of people know the story, and usually the version of the story that we hear with Noah is the cute children's story where Noah builds this big boat and you get all the cute animals onto the boat. They go on a little cruise, and then there's a nice, pretty rainbow in the sky, and then they get off the ark. And I understand why that's the version of the story that we tell kids. But as we get older, we need to have a new understanding of the story. When there's this kid song, and maybe I know just a handful of you maybe were in Sunday school as kids, and maybe you heard this song. It goes like this. It goes, God said to Noah, there's gonna be a floody, floody. God said to Noah, there's gonna be a floody, floody. Get those animals out of the muddy, muddy, children of the Lord. Anybody know this? So rise and shine and give God the glory, glory. Rise and shine, give God the glory, glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, children of the Lord. Yes, yes. But there's more to the story. There's more to the story. And it's really one of the most powerful examples of obedience in the Bible. How many of you like to watch the TV shows about preppers? Anybody watch prepper TV shows? Like, anybody seen the show Doomsday Preppers? Okay. Yeah, it's about people all over America who are getting ready for the end of the world. And a lot of times we watch those shows, and some of you, how many of you say, I admire those people? Like, I want to be one of those people. Okay. There's some of you like that. And some of you watch and you're just like, those people are out of their minds, right? They're crazy. But Noah was actually the first doomsday prepper. Noah lived during a time of incredible evil, of rebellion and violence, and a lot of people who just didn't care about the things of God at all. Is a lot like our world today. But no, there was something different about Noah. His life was marked by his all-in commitment to God. And I want us to look at Noah's life and see what we can draw today as an example for the way we need to live in the context of the world that we're in today, much like Noah's world. By the way, we finished our NT90X through the New Testament yesterday, 90 days through the New Testament. And so for those of you who made it all the way through, way to go. I just want to celebrate you. We're going to be looking in our Bibles in Genesis chapter 6 today. If you have your Bible, I'd encourage you to turn there. And the first thing that we see here is, I will give my all for God's call. I will give my all for God's call. Look at the detailed call that God gave to Noah. He said, Noah, you're going to build a gigantic boat. Now, how in the world would Noah know how to build a big boat like that? DIY project, ultimate DIY project, right? And he couldn't look on YouTube, to see how to get it done. But God gave him the exact instructions and specs. And we see this in Genesis 6:14. He says, so make yourself an ark of cypress wood, make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. And then he says, make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks. A lot of times when you picture, as I pictured this big boat, we just think it's a big open boat. Maybe the animals were just kind of stacked on top of each other, but there's actually floors. And my family got to make a trip to Kentucky at the beginning of this year, and we visited the life-size replica of Noah's Ark. And it was really cool to see all the ways that you can walk around inside this ark and see all the ways that the systems and how everything might have functioned for this to work. And so God directed Noah how to do this, but Noah was not just half-hearted or halfway in on this. He was all in. God didn't have to convince Noah. He didn't have to twist his arm. God said, build it. So Noah started building. And not only that, he didn't wait for the rain to start falling. He gave it all he had. He got his family in on this project. It was a family mission. And that's how it's to be done. We're to do this, God's call on our lives, with our families and get our families in on it. And I don't know if you've ever tried to build something with your family, but Pam and I, we try building projects or remodeling projects, and we get it done. Usually there's some tension in the process, and it's not always easy, but we get it done. And just like Noah had these specific instructions from God about what he was supposed to build and how he was supposed to do it, we have a clear command from Jesus about what it is we're supposed to be building today. We are building his church, and Jesus gave us this instruction in the Great Commission in Matthew 28:19. He said, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. And those are our instructions. And at the Connection Church, we have a very clear and simple but vital purpose. It's these three things. It's to connect with God, to connect with people, and to connect people with God. And we get to be a part of the greatest building project in the world, in all of history. And we get to be a part of building the local church. Listen, Jesus didn't start a business, a corporation. He didn't start a soup kitchen, though that's important. Jesus started a church, and we're all about growing God's kingdom. And at the Connection Church, God is calling us to have the same kind of radical, all-in obedience to God. When we say yes to God, even when it seems crazy, we're showing our world what it looks like to trust in God with everything that we've got. So what do? We step up, we give generously. We take God at his word. When God tells us, we bring the first 10% back to him. That's called the tithe. We serve through our dream team in our ministries that are changing people's lives. We invite people to come into the Connection Church and tell them about the difference that Jesus makes in their lives. And that's what it looks like to be all in on God's call for our lives. God's mission requires us to do exactly what God tells us to do, just like Noah did. So ask yourself that. Say, am I fully committed like Noah? Am I all in? Am I leading my family to be all in? And then secondly, if I'm going to follow Noah's example, I am set apart, being bold at heart. Okay, look at the state of the world during Noah's day. It was messed up. It was jacked up. In fact, a lot of people, they want to reject the story of Noah because they say, well, how could God do that? How could God flood the world like that? Well, Genesis 6:5 explains it like this. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. Let's check that out, full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become, for all the people on earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence. Because of them, I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So rise and shine and give God the glory. I mean, that is dark. That is dark, to destroy all the people. Listen, there wasn't just one flood. There were actually two floods. First flood was a flood of violence that filled the earth, a flood of evil. God said all the people are corrupt. And it was a world of terrible evil. The word used to describe the wickedness here is the Hebrew word mashhit, which means destruction. And that's the same word that describes what God does to the wicked. So we see the wicked people destroying God's good creation. And so what God does is God destroys the destroyers. Why would God do that? Because yes, God is love and God is holy. And if you, for example, have a family member who has cancer, then you're going to go to whatever extreme lengths you can go to wipe out the cancer that is destroying your loved one. But Noah was different than the evil world around him. He didn't just try to blend into his culture. He refused to compromise. He didn't let the culture determine his level of commitment. And he wasn't worried about what the people around him thought about him. Now, you can imagine the kind of insults and the kind of dissing and shade that Noah got from all the people around him. He's building a huge boat for a flood, and they're like, what's a flood? There's never been a flood before. And people couldn't understand what Noah was doing because they didn't believe that a flood was actually coming. They didn't believe in the God who said that a flood was coming. And they tried to ridicule him and they tried to dissuade him. And we see this in the New Testament in 2 Peter 3 and verse 6. Both of these, it's talking about the time of Noah, but it's talking about the time at that time and our time. Above all, you must understand that in the last days, these are the last days, scoffers will come. Scoffing. Scoffers gonna scoff. And following their own evil desires. By these waters also the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. Okay, as it was then, so it is today. And living for Jesus sounds crazy. What? You're trusting in God? You're living a life that stands out, that's different, and you're making people feel uncomfortable. Not that you're trying to make people feel uncomfortable. It just makes people nervous when you're living for Jesus. But that's the best thing that you can do to show people who Jesus is. And even though the world around Noah was so wicked, Noah stood out. And maybe because the world around Noah was so dark, he shined, he stood out. And Genesis 6:8 says, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. What was different about Noah? Let me tell you the biggest difference about Noah. The thing that made him stand out was that he found favor in the eyes of the Lord. This is the first mention of grace in the Bible. God poured out a flood of favor on Noah. What is grace? Grace means that we get something that we don't deserve. Do you know what sets us apart at the Connection Church? It's because of his grace. God has poured out his favor on us here. He blesses us in so many ways that I can't even explain. I wish I could explain it, but I want to give you an example of how he's done it. Over 2,000 people were a part of our first Good Friday celebration on Good Friday at the Buda Park. We had beautiful weather, we had beautiful worship, we had communion, we had people celebrating changed lives with 30 baptisms. It was amazing. It was incredible. And then last weekend, I'm talking just Saturday and Sunday, we had over 3,000 people attend our worship services in Buda and in San Marcos last weekend. All right, so incredible. So far in 2025, we have celebrated 98 baptisms. Baptism is the first step of obedience of a new believer. And so it's a mark of a changed life. And we live in a culture today that is actively opposed to the truth of the gospel. They're not just passively drifting away from God, but many people are actively resisting him. But God is still calling people today, just like he did with Noah, to build something that will change lives. And that's what Jesus told us to build the church. And we want to follow Noah's example. In Genesis 6:22, it says, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. And for us, that means that when God says it in his word, in the Bible, we take him at his word. When he asks us to take big steps of faith, that even though they don't make sense, we're going to do it. Even when it's dramatically opposed to what our culture says, we're going to stick by it. And that takes courage. And a big reason that people don't stand up today and don't speak out today about their faith is because they're afraid of people. They're afraid of what people will say or what people will think. We don't want to be canceled. We don't want to upset the apple cart. You have to choose every day who it is you're going to please. Are you going to live to please other people, our world? Are you going to live to please God? That's living for an audience of one. You know, when we posted about we were inviting people to our Good Friday service and to our Easter services on Facebook and on Instagram, man, we got a flood of insults and of accusations in our comments from internet trolls. I don't know if you got to see any of those. They're entertaining. But, you know, many of those were from unbelievers, but some of them were from other Christians or people who call themselves Christians. But no matter what kind of shade they were throwing, no matter what kind of threats they were giving, it showed us that the enemy didn't like what it is that we're up to, and God was up to something even bigger. All right, so we stand. Our power verse for this week is Psalm 27:1. Let's say this out loud together. This is our stand. Here we go. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? You can hold on to this one. You can count on this one. I'm not going to fear what other people might say because the Lord is my light. I'm not going to back down because the Lord is my strong tower. And even though the world around us doesn't understand, and even because they don't understand, we've got to live out the life-changing power of Jesus in front of a world that desperately needs him. And the third way to mirror Noah's example is this: our urgent mission, the soul's condition. Noah understood how urgent the mission was because people's lives were at stake. The future was at stake. There wasn't much time. And so in Genesis 6:17, here's more of what God's saying. He says, I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it. everything on earth will perish, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female. Hey, and you are to, I lost my place there, male and female. So to keep them alive with you, 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. Think about the reality of this. Only the people on the ark would survive, and the animals that would survive, they were only the ones that were on the ark. And so every nail that Noah nailed into the wood, he was thinking about his faith in God, but also the fact that every person that he saw, he knew that if they were on the ark, they would survive. If they weren't, they would not survive. They would drown. And God gave the people 120 years. It took him 120 years. They had all of that time to turn to God as Noah was telling them and warning them, but they didn't listen. Now think about this. Every single person you see, every single person that you lock eyes with is a person who will spend forever somewhere. They're either lost or found. They're either saved or they're sinking. So church, we have an urgent mission to reach as many people as quickly as we can. There's no time to waste. I wonder how you see the Connection Church boat. Do you see it as a cruise ship or as a battleship? A cruise ship is great for a nice, relaxing vacation, all you can eat, parties on deck. But we're a battleship. And on a battleship, there is a clear mission. Every person on board has an assignment. And hopefully the battles that are happening with the battleship aren't on board the ship, okay? If they are, there's something wrong. The battles are fought as you're moving forward, pushing back the darkness in our world. And we're in the middle of this 2-year faith journey we call A Place to Call Home. And even though we're halfway through, it's not too late to get in on it, okay? I know a lot of us, you weren't here a year ago. And so we want to invite you on. A Place to Call Home is about paying off our 11.5 acres of land that we have purchased in Buda, not too far from here. And it's also about installing a parking lot at our San Marcos campus. And this is all so we can build a home for people, for future generations, and for people who are not here yet. And last weekend was overwhelming victory. But with the victory, there were some big challenges. And one of the biggest challenges that we faced was our parking situation. And it was made worse by having bigger crowds. And it rained in San Marcos. Trying to park people on a muddy parking lot in the rain on Easter is not a good first impression. And you know, first impressions count. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. People decide whether they're going to come back to the church within the first 7 minutes that they come onto our campus, which is good news for me because that means, you know, as I'm preaching, you've already decided whether or not you're coming back. But it means we got to be on our A game as people come onto the campus. Some people told us that in Buda, it took them like 30 minutes to find a parking place and 30 minutes to get out of the parking lot. Now, we have an incredible street team, incredible parking team, did a great job. But a lot of people are going to just look at that and they're going to say, hey, if I can't find a place to park, you're signaling to me you don't have a place for me and to go away. And if you can't park them, you can't reach them. And if we're serious about reaching people, we're going to do everything we can to make room for every single person. Sometimes the biggest barrier to reach people isn't a lack of passion, it's just a lack of pavement, okay? So now check this out, to celebrate, because of our Easter offering today, we are adding one piece to our puzzle. We're adding another piece to our puzzle. We're adding two pieces to our place to call home puzzle. So together combined, these pieces represent $100,000. That's incredible. It's incredible. But listen, they don't just represent dollars. These pieces represent faithfulness. These pieces represent sacrifice and obedience and passion. And so they represent so much more, because this is about more than just building things. This is about building people. This is about building a spiritual lifeboat for the people in Hays County and beyond. And as soon as we meet our goal of $1.8 million, then we'll be able to move ahead with breaking ground. So far we're nearly at $950,000. Okay? And it's easy to get discouraged and think, will we ever get there? Yes. Building something great takes time. How many of you have some weeds popping up in your yard? Okay, they pop up overnight. Okay, it takes overnight to grow weeds. It takes like 20 to 30 years to build an oak tree. Building something good takes time. And Noah didn't finish the ark in a weekend. It may have taken him 120 years. Can you imagine staying faithful during all that time without a single drop of rain? And it's easy to quit, to walk away when it's hard. But Noah didn't think about quitting, and we're not quitting until we get there. I wonder how many people give up right before the victory. Galatians 6:9 is one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Okay, so we're gonna stay faithful and obedient, refuse to quit. And then the final example here is this: there's only one door, live forevermore. The ark, did you notice that? As we read the instructions, only had one single door. Do you know why? Because it was a symbol of the fact that there's only one way in, there's only one way to be saved. You have to go through the one door. And when Noah and all the family, his family and the animals got on, it started to rain, and look at what happened. God shut the door himself. Genesis 7:16, then the Lord shut him in. And at that point, no one else could get in. And I'm sure it must have been so hard to hear the desperate cries of those who were saying, I believe, I want to get in. The door was not just a door of salvation, it was also a door of judgment on the world. But the ark was an ark of salvation that carried God's people through the rough waters to safety. Now you fast forward 2,300 years to John, to the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 9. Jesus said, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved. Jesus is the door. And just like the ark, there's only one way into salvation. There's only one way into safety. It's through him. Listen, we're not building a church just to have a better building. We're building a place where people can find the door. And so I want to encourage you on this place to call home. Some of you, you're celebrating. Yeah, this is great. This is great. Keep going. But listen, we got to go all in. All of us. It takes all of us. And so I encourage you, go to myconnect.center and check out how you can commit to being a part of a place to call home, because your celebration is going to match your participation. And today, Jesus stands as the door, and the door is open to everyone. Our job is to invite them, is to tell them, and to welcome them in before the door closes, because make no mistake, there's going to come a time when that door finally shuts, What Noah did saved his family, saved humanity, and he did it no matter what the odds are. And sometimes we look at the odds in our world today and we say they don't look very good. But listen, if you're standing with God, the odds are ever and forever in your favor. God invites us in, but he invites us to invite others in. This is not a time for half-heartedness, halfway in. It's not a time for spectators. It is a time for builders. It's a time for families to step up together, for us to worship God and for us to live for him, not just on Sunday, but every day, because this is bigger than a building. This is about eternity. So my question is, are you all in? Are you building the church? Are you all in on reaching out to your neighbors? Are you all in on seeing lives saved? At some point, there won't be any time left to decide. There won't be any time left to tell somebody or to reach them. So the time to build, the time to invite, the time to serve, the time to give, the time to obey is now. And you can make that decision today to build something that will result in the saving of many, many lives, because the door is open. And Jesus is calling you to come in, and he's calling you to bring others, as many as you can, along with you, and to bring your family along with you before it's too late. And if you've never walked through the door, I'm talking about the door of Jesus, the door of salvation, the door of life. If you've never said yes to Jesus, today is your day. You can trust in him. You can come into the true ark of safety, the true ark of salvation. Let's pray together. God, we thank you in this moment. Jesus, we thank you that you are the door, and we believe that. And God, we thank you that you've called us to stand for you and to live for you and to be obedient and to endure and to not give up and to stand apart. God, help us to do that. Help us to walk after you faithfully through our culture that doesn't get it, that is a world of darkness. God, help us to be your light. And for those today who would say, I need Jesus, I want to walk through the door of Jesus today. If that's you, then you can start a conversation with him right now by saying, Dear Jesus, I need you in my life. I don't want to live another day apart from you. And I want to turn from my sin, and I want to turn to you and give you my life. Thank you for giving your life for me. Make me new from the inside out. Fill me with your spirit and help me to follow after you from now on. Thank you for the work you're doing in my life. In Jesus' name, amen.